Hello, here's a little video from Bristow Memorial Church showing you how to create a vegetable bed out of a patch of lawn. Now it's easy to get the impression that to start a vegetable garden you need a lot of bought-in compost and timber for edging your beds. Now there's a couple of good reasons why you might want to garden in raised beds. The first being if you're not comfortable kneeling or squatting to work at ground level or digging, in which case you can build some raised beds so you can work at kind of waist level. The other reason might be if your soil is no good. So if it's say very shallow and immediately under the grass you've got just a load of rubble, or less likely that you have some kind of dangerous contamination. That's probably only likely if you're on a sort of a former industrial site, but it is worth considering whether that might be the case. And if you've got any doubts about it, give us a shout and we can give you some advice. There is a contaminated land advisor in the council who you can contact if that's likely to be an issue. But anyway, for this video is really for people who just want to get a vegetable bed started on a patch of lawn with the minimum of equipment, and kind of assuming that you're okay doing a bit of heavy digging, because it is quite hard work. But it's good exercise. So the first step is to mark out the area you want to dig over. I'm going to demonstrate on an additional bed with a path, just to go onto the side of the existing bed to your right. So that's 5.5 foot along the base, and here we have. Those are the tools you're going to need. The one you can do without is the turf cutting tool on your right. You can easily just use an ordinary kind of edging spade for cutting the turf. But just a shovel, a fork, a spade, and a wheelbarrow, and a decent pair of work gloves. Now your first job is to cut the turf off a strip at least 2 foot wide at the end of your dig. So you can do this with any spade. If you try and cut it into blocks a foot square, then they're easiest to lift that way. So just go along the edge. So once you've cut the turf into squares, you can cut it off with a shovel like this. So if you get a good swing at it and there aren't too many rocks in the way, the turf comes off fairly easily. So there's the first strip deturfed, and stick it in the barrow and dump it at the end of the trench. So next you want to dig out this soil to about a foot's depth, about 25-30 centimetres. And the soil from this first strip goes in the barrow, and you'll take it to the end of the dig along with the turf. And this will eventually go back in once you've got to the end of the area that you're digging over. And while you're digging, you can be looking out for and removing any big rocks or bits of glass and other rubbish. Good reason to wear gloves when you're working. And troublesome weeds like dock and couch grass. So try and get that out of your soil if you can. And then you can just shovel out the remaining crumbs of soil into your barrow. Okay, so I've cleaned up this first trench just so you can see the soil profile. You see the top 20 centimetres or so is kind of a bit stony and compacted, but there's another 15 or 20 centimetres of really good stone-free dark topsoil underneath that, and then below that at a depth of about 35 centimetres the sort of paler orangey stuff we're hitting at the bottom of the trench. That's the subsoil. And if you've got like 25 or 30 centimetres of topsoil before you start hitting this, this sort of paler inorganic material, you've got a decent depth of soil for growing vegetables in. And when you're digging, you want to stop when you reach the subsoil. So don't dig this up. It hasn't got much in the way of nutrients that will help your vegetables. So you can kind of loosen it up a bit, but that's kind of where you stop. So now you can start stripping off the turf from the next 2 or 3 foot. So again, cut it into squares, take it off with the shovel, and you're throwing it grass side down into the trench that you've just dug. So there's the turf from the next strip, buried in the trench. And so the turf, the top few centimetres, contains a lot of soil nutrients, but also lots of roots and seeds of weeds. But if you bury them deep enough, they will not get a chance to come to the surface, and they'll just rot down and eventually provide lots of nutrients for your growing plants. So now you're back to digging with the fork, except this time, instead of putting it in the barrow and taking it to the end of the trench, you could just chuck it into the trench next to you, on top of all the turf. So now you can pull out any big stones that you find, any bits of rubbish, roots of perennial weeds, and you don't need to go down all the way to the subsoil. As long as you're burying the grass beneath about 20 centimetres of soil, that's probably enough to stop most of the weeds from growing through. So there's the second strip of soil dug out and cast up on top of the turf. That's probably deep enough, about a fork's depth. You can loosen up the soil at the bottom of the trench. So now, sometime later, we've reached the end of the trench, and you can see it's all mounded up a bit. Really, just because we've been loosening up the soil. And here's the final trench filled with turf. So now you can just backfill the soil that you piled up at the end of the trench, when you're doing the first bit of digging, and chuck it back into the last bit of turf. So the only thing left to do now is just level off the bed and mound it up. I'm going to leave a little sunken path between this one and the next bed. So you just use a fork to break up any big clods of earth and smooth it out into a nice level seed bed. So there's the finished article, ready for sowing or planting. So after digging over most of the garden at Bristow using this method, I came across this page in my grandparents' copy of The Vegetable Garden Displayed from 1941, where what we've just been doing is called bastard trenching. I wonder why. Anyway, you can see this is not just some invention of mine, but good old-fashioned dig for victory stuff. So good luck with your bastard trenching, and take care not to overdo it and injure your back. It's all about good technique and taking it slow and steady.